right. It's 5 after. I know folks are still joining, but we're going to go ahead and get started. I wanted to say good morning to everyone. Happy Friday. We reached the end of the month. So congratulations to all of us, and I hope everyone's doing well today. And we're going to go ahead and get started. So please mute yourselves if you haven't already, and let's begin. All right. So my name is Yero. Good morning again. My name is Yero Martin, and I'm the Director of Membership and Capital Programs at Rise Economy. Thank you for joining us today for this amazing fireside chat, The Future of Community Lending, AI, Innovation, and Equity. This is part of Rise Economy's curated learning series. Next slide. And next slide, please. Awesome. So this is part of a new series that we're kicking off today, where we are pairing a visionary fireside chat with hands-on workshops. So there are two companion sessions monthly from September through December. And so the goal is to move from big ideas to practical action. So we invite you to not just listen in and participate in today's conversation, but also to join us later today for the companion workshop if you are able. All right, next slide. And again, I welcome all of you who are members and who are friends of Rise Economy. You know, we are, for those who are new here, Rise Economy is a member-led alliance of over 380 organizations across California, fighting for racial justice and economic equity. Again, we are launching this new session, and we really want to hone in on, AI. We have different types of members, from community lenders to folks in the housing space and other sectors. But AI is disrupting all of our work, and we want to just do a deeper dive into this space. So today we're going to learn more about how AI enabled secondary markets for CRA loans are reshaping community lending, creating liquidity, unlocking tailored CRA assets, and increasing investment in historically excluded communities. Next slide. Okay, and so I'm super excited to introduce some of you and reintroduce you to, for others of you, to our featured speaker today, Christien Williams, who is the founder and CEO of COI and also a Fulbright scholar. So I'll take a moment to read his bio. It's also on the screen, and then we will jump into our conversation. All right. Christien is a co-founder and CEO of COI, a fintech startup developing AI-powered compliance and analytics software for banks. Previously, he was a product manager at Smith Futures, leading product work with their grantees. He led the go-to-market strategy and the beta development of battery storage system, dispatch optimization at a speed stage climate tech startup, and productized and launched a novel fair lending tool for regulators at a fintech startup. Before Smith Futures, Christien worked on computer vision infrastructure at Facebook and studied as a machine learning researcher at École Normale Supérieure Paris Saclay. Okay, I'm sure I butchered that, but he can correct me later. Where where he was a Fulbright scholar. His work on fast, accurate, supervised cloud annotation has been published by IGARSS. Christien holds a Bachelor's of Science and Mechanical Engineering and Computer Science from MIT. So if you all could just send a warm welcome virtually to our featured guest, Christien Williams. Christien, did you want to say a few words before we get started?
I just wanted to say thank you for organizing this group. It's been a pleasure to one, get you better and see how you've brought together this incredible community. I know that there are a ton of community organizations that are part of the conversation today, but really this is just a single point in time, and that there's ongoing work always. And so I appreciate the time that you've taken to gather everybody for this conversation.
Wonderful. We're really excited to have you here today. Next slide, please. All right, so this is a fireside chat. We're going to be having a really great conversation with our featured guest today, but we want you to be a part of that conversation as well. So, excuse me, feel free to use the chat for questions, and we'll make sure to save time at the end for Q&A. But please, let's all be respectful and kind of make sure that equity is at the center of our dialogue. And just a friendly reminder that this session is being recorded. Okay, next slide. Okay, let's jump into our conversation. Christian, can you tell us a little bit more about Koi and, kind of your motivations for launching Koi? What was the gap in the community lending space that you were determined to address?
Absolutely. I think part of what's helpful in answering this question is explaining where the name for Koi came from. There's the old adage, don't give a man a fish, teach him to fish. And it's really about this person who wants to be self-sufficient, create for himself, create for his community. And we believe that there are tons of people around the country that are trying to fish, if not but for the resources to be able to create. And I think everybody in this call is well aware of differences in access to resources. There are tons of underserved communities. And for me, I originally came into this space thinking about access to capital for small businesses. We know that an additional dollar spent or sort of generated in small businesses leads to additional dollars circulating in communities. Dollars stay inside those communities instead of funneling out. It's a wealth creator both for the business owner, but the communities themselves. And so that was my initial understanding and the reason that I was drawn to the space of access to capital. And as I got introduced to CRA, this legislation that motivates banks, creates this obligation and responsibility on these lenders, these community lenders, to really dedicate resources to the communities that they're taking deposits from, where they have a presence. I thought it made a ton of sense to try and work on some of the inefficiencies that are there to be able to create more funds available for lending. And so that's sort of the motivation. It started from thinking about small business lending, their role in communities and wealth creation, but realized, okay, there's this infrastructure that exists, and it's not just applicable to small business, but mortgage and lending more generally. And there's an opportunity potentially for myself and my team to leverage our background in technology and AI to build solutions that empower the folks that are doing this work best, the lenders and members of the community.
Yeah, yeah, thank you for that. And so liquidity has long been a challenge for CDFIs and community lenders in general. What would you say is at stake if these gaps remain unresolved?
It's a great question. I really think it boils down to fewer dollars reaching underserved communities, low and moderate income borrowers, CDFIs, MDIs, community lenders that don't have the liquidity that they need to do the work that they're looking to do. That means they're turning away qualified borrowers, might remain dependent on expensive wholesale funding, or deposits that can be a challenge to raise in different sort of macroeconomic situations. These institutions lose competitiveness compared to larger institutions with stronger balance sheets, but these larger institutions aren't necessarily ones that are always in communities or willing to do the work that it takes to meet communities where they are. And so I think ultimately it's like a longer term erosion of the pillars that are working hand in hand with communities, to sustainably serve those markets.
So, Christian, how do you see AI transforming community lending? Like, tell us what it is that, just help us to understand that process. In what ways can community, just help us understand that a little bit more.
Yeah, absolutely. Our philosophy at Koi is that AI helps people who have intentionality. I think there's a lot of conversation today about how AI seeks to replace, but we really feel like the goal should be to enhance, to eliminate inefficiencies, to accelerate human and people's workflows with intentionality. So in terms of workflows from loan officers taking applications all the way to back in the back and forth of borrowers to create better borrower experiences. From underwriting all the way to compliance. In our specific use cases, some of the things that we're thinking about are when institutions have to do analysis to be able to understand, in the CRA context, for example, what are our gaps? How do we better understand our performance for us to determine and take that next step as to like what is the strategy then to fix it? There are disparate systems between mortgage team, between the small business lending team, and somebody's needing to synthesize and harmonize data across all these different areas. How can we do this more efficiently so more time is actually spent on the strategy of extending access to capital, reaching these communities, as opposed to wrangling? That is like back office inefficiency. And so the way that we think about it is like, what does your workflow look like today? How do you sort of like with those, I think it's called like a travelator or something like that at the airports, those like little escalator things. With every step that you're taking, you can now take you can travel quite twice the distance. And so that's how we think about AI in terms of accelerating the current workflows to be able to be more efficient, do more quickly, but still allow that human level intentionality, and to not erode the trust that I think is necessary between institutions like lenders and the communities that they sit in.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. Many lenders are cautious about AI bias and transparency. What principles guide you to ensure responsible use of these tools?
Sure. I think that there are two big lenses or two big verticals where people are thinking about AI in banking and lending. One is around decisioning, and then other is about operational efficiencies. For the former, there are obvious risks. Like, is AI adopting the same biases that have perversely impacted communities for decades? And how do we navigate that to make sure that those aren't being replicated? How do we make sure that the decisions that we're using these automations to enhance are the right decision we want to make? And I think part of it is model auditability and explainability. So when you have this tool that is helping to make these decisions, is there transparency in the outputs that are coming out? Can you, as an institution that's employing this technology, feel confident that like, oh, we understand what are the steps that were taken in the interim, in the intermediate steps for this tool to make this decision? Can we explain it? Can we be able to explain it not just for ourselves internally, but be transparent to our communities, to the regulators that are working for us to try and make sure that stuff is fair? Then there's this aspect of tuning for fairness. Again, we're talking about this world of leveraging AI to make decisions. There are companies out there like Fair Play AI, and others that will automate this sort of AI governance to be able to help understand what is actually considered fair, something that you're able to actually tune as an institution to your own standards. And so I think, again, audibility, explainability, transparency, and tuning for fairness is really big on this vector of leveraging AI for decisions. But then there's this other aspect with it, which is operational efficiencies. I think the way that we think about sort of principles to make sure responsible use of these tools in this vector are really about clear boundaries. Like, where is it important for humans to be in the loop, and where is it then an added benefit to have this tool that can accelerate that work? Um, for example, sort of thinking about AI here as an assistant, not an arbiter. So decisions remain mission driven, and critical judgments remain with those sort of team members that we want to feel are responsible for actually driving those decisions. So in this separate vector around operational efficiency, it's creating those boundaries to understand what are mission critical decisions that we think people should be making with that level of human intentionality. And then, okay, now that we've drawn those boundaries, we can bring in the tools in the necessary domains that allow this person to be more efficient so they can focus on those important decisions.
Very good. So, can you walk us through Koi's secondary marketplace and how it works, but like use, simple language. Some of us are not as fluent, when it comes to, AI literacy, but just walk us through the secondary marketplace and why it matters for both lenders and banks.
Yeah, I'm going to start with the second part first, why we think secondary marketplace is important for these financial institutions. Um, there are a variety of reasons why an institution might have loans on their balance sheet and might be interested in selling. It doesn't have to be, I think sometimes there's a stigma of like, oh, these are bad loans. Like that's not necessarily the case in a lot of different ecosystems, it's not necessarily like oh, I am exchanging bad for good. It's like, how do we work together to be more efficient? And so maybe there's an institution that, wants to do better balance sheet management, wants to get more liquidity so that they can go out and lend further. They can extend the actual sort of reserves that they have to be able to meet their community needs. This is the benefit of a secondary marketplace for them because they now have an outlet. They now have a place where, as opposed to going to sort of other lenders that are charging fees for this capital for community lenders to go out and lend, they can instead sell these loans. And then on the other hand, institutions that have CRA obligations in specific communities that, for whatever reason, feel like it's more efficient for them to deploy capital via purchasing loans from another institution that has that presence, they now have a mechanism to find these counterparties more efficiently. And so this is what the benefit looks like for institutions that might sell, for institutions might buy. What we envisioned with Koi is, can we make this a centralized experience and platform where if as a prospective buyer, hey, we're focused in this geography, this is the type of loan product that we're interested in, it makes sense for our balance sheet. If this is the type of borrower demographic that we want to have play a part in supporting, like you can provide that information the same way that you might search for stuff on Amazon. Like it's that sort of experience. And then the institution that has originated these loans, they can easily just drag and drop a file, post this onto the platform to be able to make themselves available for others to discover. So that's sort of the experience that we wanted to bring to bear.
Awesome. So it sounds like Koi is also creating solutions for banks that are navigating the CRA lending requirements. So just if you could just clearly explain, how does your model help the banks to meet the goals, but also, at the same time, supporting the community lenders?
Yeah. So I'll speak to two pieces here. One sort of marketplace more generally, but then uh, some of the other solutions that we've been thinking about at Koi. So in terms of the marketplace more generally, how it provides value to these lenders and to the communities, I think it goes back to this concept of liquidity and having the funds available to meet the needs of the borrowers and the communities that you're looking to serve. And so if you are an institution that might fall on the spectrum of like a seller in this sort of ecosystem, you now have funds today to be able to go meet those needs. And so that's what it looks like on their end. For institutions that might be buyers, if you feel that, we are not meeting the goals that we sort of set out to reach organically through our lending, there might be another institution out there for whom this is their bread and butter. They have roots here, and you purchasing from them provides them with the liquidity to go out and do that work. And so while it's not the same thing as, boots on the ground and being there, I think it does still present the opportunity if there's another institution for whom they have that community relationship and they're able to execute at a deeper level. So with respect to the marketplace side of things, I think that's how we're thinking about it. And then just solutions more generally, we think that healthy, efficient lenders drive change because they're empowered to do what they do best. And again, this is extending access to capital to those that need it most. And, early on in our journey, we recognized that, you know, trading this buying and selling of loans on the marketplace, that is the end of a long chain of internal workflows, reports, and analyses. And banks need to understand their data. They need to bring information from their core platforms, Excel sheets from different teams, harmonizing this to get the base understanding of the data needed for analysis. They had to answer key questions like what are the gaps that currently exist in our lending to low and moderate income communities. And so we thought it was prudent to focus more on solving these intermediate steps as well. And so, one of the tools that we have developed was a software tool that helps ingest all of this loan data and tell institution what's this gap, what these gaps look like, what the performance is, analysis. We've also done analysis with banks to help them better understand like what is the volume of loans that they might need to, purchase or in different circumstances. And then again, realizing that data wrangling is a challenge. Banks have a lot of loan related data. They still live off of spreadsheets and have to reconcile this. I'm like, this is the input into the decisions. And so working on tools that make this process a lot easier to be able to pull the information in that you need to be able to quickly get to that understanding of like, okay, this is now the sort of understanding of our current loan balance and portfolio, having stitched together all this different information for us to start to make that decision. And so we're actually pretty excited about some of the tools that we're thinking about in this space. And so, if this is something that you guys are having trouble with today, your bank community organization, we'd love to speak to you about this sort of data wrangling challenge as well.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'd like you to just spend some time on how COI can support smaller lenders, how the model can support smaller lenders. We have a number of, small and emerging lenders in our membership. And so, yeah, these lenders may not have large tech teams or balance sheets. How do you all support them?
Yeah. So I think there are a couple of different factors here. One is being super, super intentional about listening to our partners to understand like what is the right technology to build and solutions to build that requires minimal lift from internal teams. The goal is not let us, shove bells and whistles into every single nook and cranny and make stuff super complicated. I think simplicity and being able to develop something that takes very low lift to onboard and manage is has been our philosophy from the start. And I think that's especially applicable for smaller lenders that, team members are wearing several different hats and there's bandwidth constraints. And so we want to make sure that it's minimal lift. We don't want to add extra work. Another part of it is affordable pricing, specifically trying to be priced to fit budgets of community focused lenders. And then you know, I think in general, just going back to this notion of simplicity, thinking about how we can help simplify the compliance reporting aspect as well. Truly capturing the entire workflow is how we've thought about it.
That would be super helpful. Thanks so much. Just shifting gears a little bit, what do you say or what do you think is the biggest opportunity for scaling AI models like Koi across the country?
Yeah. One thing that I would love to see more of in general is companies that are thinking about these solutions spending time with the teams at these institutions and these institutions actually being receptive to having folks come sit down and look over the shoulder, have a conversation in person. um, I spoke earlier about the difference between let's just throw AI to replace everything versus like how do we actually enhance the folks that are doing the work. I don't think you can do this successfully by imagining what somebody's workflow looks like from afar. I think is something that needs to be done hand in hand. Uh, Community institutions, I think, know best the importance of being in the place where you're looking to have an impact and standing with the folks you're looking to serve. And so I think that model should actually be applied when thinking about how we leverage AI to scale these different models, like can we have people sitting in those seats or looking over shoulders? Because I think actually that's actually how we'll move most quickly, and also, you know, make fewer mistakes because it's an open conversation.
I love that. What would you say are the key barriers, policy, technical, or cultural, that still need to be overcome?
Yeah, I think there will be an ongoing, so with respect to policy, I think ongoing conversation about what does what is our the guidance for responsible AI in financial services. Um, Financial services, understandably, is a space that is concerned about risk and privacy of borrowers and um, transparency around how decisions are made. And so I think that will be an ongoing conversation. With respect to the technical standpoint, I think the barriers will be this sort of fragmentation across legacy systems. Our financial institutions are some of the like oldest, I think, institutions that we have in the country and have a lot of legacy processes, and for good reason. At the same time, I think uh, we need to make sure that the when we're thinking about how we transition to a more efficient place or a more innovative place, there are going to be sort of gaps along the way where information is siloed or processes are siloed. And so, like, how do we bring sort of a unification across those different things? I don't think there's a one size fits all solution, which is why I think it's so important to have more people sitting together, the technical folks, the financial services folks, so that the technical folks understands intimately, like, okay, this is what the systems look like internally and why, and this is what happened. Like, we can't just uh, on sort of antithesis to what some leaders in the country think, that you can just come in and break stuff and, you know, make a mess and everything is going to be fine. That's probably not the right way to do things. Um, so I think that's how I think about the technical, like how do we bring unification to some of these fragmented systems? Um, and then cultural, there is the fear of AI for a lot of reasons. And I do think it's warranted. It's developing at a pace that we've never seen before. It is doing things that we have never seen before. It's doing things that we can't always explain. And it's not and it is a lot of the innovation is being driven by uh, the same institutions and leaders that have acted perversely historically. And so um, I think that drives fear on a variety of different levels. That doesn't necessarily mean that there isn't promise. And so I think the cultural aspect is, you know, helping to uh, bring 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 the right people to the table to have conversations about, like, what does this actually mean when we make these changes, when we decide that we're going to rip stuff up and throw stuff in, like, what does that actually mean? Who's being impacted? What are the sort of customs that have been in place and why are they there? And so, like, how do we under take that understanding to develop what needs to happen going forward? And so I think it's just a lot of open communication, transparency, and we need methods of accountability as well.
That's a good answer. Thank you. I want to ground the conversation a little bit and ground it with some practical takeaways. So, for the CDFIs and the nonprofits that are on the call today, what would you say would be one practical step that they can begin to take if they are experimenting with AI responsibly? You know, as they begin to experiment with AI responsibly.
Yeah. I would say, if I could give a couple as opposed to just one,
Sure. The more the
start small.
merrier.
Start small. I don't think the approach needs to be a massive sweeping change overnight. That's I mean, one, that's typically not how anything works in financial services. So like that shouldn't be the pressure. But I think looking at small pilots for, back office tasks or operational tasks as opposed to decisioning is probably the right approach. Again, I keep talking about this human in the loop. Um, is I think really prudent just to make sure that um, the teams internally are learning like how does this actually benefit us? Where can we plug this in other areas? But also, how can we course correct or adjust when sort of the tools aren't necessarily doing what we had hoped? Let's not just make this a black box. So I think those two pieces are super important. Starting small and then working in workflows where you can have a human in the loop to tailor how the experiment is going.
Those are really, really helpful. This will be my last question, and then I want to open it up to the audience for any, questions. So, Christian, looking ahead, the first, in the next 5 to 10 years, what gives you the most hope about the future of community lending?
I think the advances in technology give me a lot of hope. And then also just the current, I think, um, I think those who are leading community work today, current generation, I think a lot of folks are very open to innovation and have grown up and are very used to this technological innovation. And so while things are moving quicker and moving faster and stuff is changing, I do think there is a familiarity with like, oh, I'm not going to shy too far away from this, or let me see how this could work, or let me get creative, let me experiment. Um, and I think there is a healthy amount of sort of optimism, as well as curiosity that, you know, with discipline can allow us to uh, um, just bring about different systems than we've currently had, or operate our systems in a more efficient way. And so I think technology is a big part of it. I do think there's also opportunity for growing collaborations throughout the financial services landscape, between large institutions and smaller institutions, CDFIs, fintechs. I think that is something that I'm looking forward to, and I think there are more incentives and reasons for these collaborations to happen. So that's another big piece of it as well.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, Christian, for such a just a rich and thought-provoking conversation. I got a lot out of this conversation. I hope that the folks on the call also did. We can go ahead and jump back into our slide deck, and if anyone has any questions to ask Christian or thoughts, comments, feel free to share. You can share them in the chat, or you can raise your hand, and we can come to you and have you ask him directly. So. Adrian, can we jump back into the slide deck, please? All right. So are there any questions or anything for Christian? Okay. Well, feel free to keep them coming. I'm going to move on. Next slide, please. Okay, so we have had a dynamic conversation with Christian this morning. And what's coming up next? Well, later today, we're going to have our companion workshop. It'll be from 2 to 3 p.m. today. The topic is AI. It's an AI tools workshop. It's an intro to lenders and nonprofits. We have two amazing facilitators from Accessity that will be guiding the conversation. You'll learn more about real world AI tools in action. You'll be able to start to think about questions to ask yourself when you're evaluating AI solutions, and also what type of guardrails to consider for responsible, equitable adoption. So please join us today to continue the party. Next slide. All right. And again, this is the beginning of a series. So I just wanted to flag that coming up, we have an amazing next fireside chat on October 10th with Adana Bio, who is the founder and CEO of Foya Development Group. She's an entrepreneur and a real estate developer. And so we'll be having a conversation framed around, from vision to community impact, affordable housing as a pathway to opportunity. So please mark your calendars, and you'll be seeing the registration for that coming soon. And again, we have a companion workshop later that day around the title is around making community ownership real tools for equitable housing and development. So please mark your calendar. We look forward to seeing you there. Next slide. And a special shout out to our sponsors for this amazing series, Federal Home Loan Bank of San Francisco, and our legacy members that are listed here. We want to thank each and every one of you. But before we wrap, any questions, comments, concerns, feedback? All right. Well, if you have any, feel free to send an email. I'll make sure to send this slide deck along with Christian's contact information, and we can continue the conversation. Next slide. And thank you all for joining us today. Hope you got as much out of this as I have. Christian, thank you again for your insights and for sharing. And I hope you all enjoy the rest of your day. We will see you later today if you're able, and take care. Bye-bye.